This is the Education Blueprint, the podcast where we frame excellence in public education. I am Prentice Elliott, your co-host and producer, and we have talked before, John, on the podcast about enrollment in post-secondary education. We've talked about employment in a career, and we are now on the third of the Knox County Schools Big Three, the three E's, enlistment in the military, with General Arnie Bunch, our guest today, the Superintendent of Hamblen County Schools.
Yeah, who better to bring in than someone who's had a very storied and decorated career, and now he's serving as a superintendent and helping raise the next generation for Morristown, Tennessee. We talk a lot about the military being kind of a mystery. Unless you maybe had a family member or you're a military family, there's lots of things in it. If you haven't been close to it, then you probably go to the movies or TV shows and kind of go, this must be what the military is like. Thought he did a really good job of speaking to families who are considering that and making that a family decision and having them sit down and talk with their graduate about lots of different things. But I thought what was more important was the maybe families who aren't considering it, to really open that horizon that the military could be an option and should be an option for everybody to make a choice to join or not.
And what we found out today is that enlistment and the military as a support system, as a career, that could also be an option for anyone. General Arnie Bunch was a great spokesman, and we had a really, really good episode with him. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Education Blueprint. I'm Dr. Jon Rysewyk, Superintendent of Knox County Schools in Knoxville, Tennessee.
And I'm Prentice Elliott, a public school parent and your producer and co-host.
Prentice, today we're talking again about post-secondary, which we said before is a fancy way of saying what kids do after they graduate.
Yeah, and though post-secondary includes enrollment at a college or university, employment, which is going directly into the workforce, or what we are talking about today, which is enlistment. I feel like there's normally two camps people fall into traditionally when talking about this. Those that either have been themselves or have someone in their family who has served in the military, and therefore they know a lot, the ins and outs, they know everything about it. And then those that have very little idea, just maybe what they've seen on TV. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, it is its own culture. It's got its own terms. It's got its own kind of way of life. And I think if you're exposed to it, my dad was a career Army guy, so I thought that was normal, right? Growing up and seeing that and moving a lot and doing those kinds of things. But I think you're right. It can seem, like you said before, what we see in the movies all the time or what we see on TV shows. And you're going, there's more to the military and enlistment than that.
And so we want to make it a little less intimidating and demystify things. And we've got a perfect guy, I think, here to do that today. Our guest today is a retired U.S. Air Force 4-star general and a superintendent. I'm just going to run through some of his impressive resume really quickly. The Hamblen County native. He became superintendent of Hamblen County Schools in 2022. Prior to that, he had a 38-year career in the Air Force, graduating from the U.S. Air Force Academy with a civil engineering degree, completed Squadron Officer School at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama, got a master's in mechanical engineering from Cal State Fresno, went through Army Command and General Staff College in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and as a Master of Science in National Security Strategy from the National War College in Washington, D.C. He received his 4th star and the post of Commander of Air Force Material Command in 2019, and I'm going to read this verbatim from his bio. He was responsible for virtually every major Air Force weapons system, plus 89,000 employees and a $60 billion, with a B, $60 billion budget. Wow. General Arnie Bunch, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you today. And yeah, my background is probably a little bit different than many of the other superintendents you get to talk to.
Yeah, it is definitely an impressive resume. And just let me start out by just saying thank you for your service to our country.
It was an honor and a privilege, and got to experience a lot of great things.
That's awesome. Just the sacrifices families make and individuals make is amazing.
Yeah, I think you hit one of the bigger ones there. Everybody talks about the individual. They forget to talk about the spouses and the kids. When we settled back in East Tennessee, that was our 19th or our 20th move in 38 years. And so my wife definitely happy to have roots planted.
I'm sure. So all the things that Prentice just said that you've done, and yet you sit in year 3 of a superintendency of a local school district. A fairly large one for East Tennessee. So that's interesting. So maybe take us back to Arnie at 18, right? How does an 18-year-old land at the Air Force Academy after graduation?
So no Air Force background, no military background, no ever real intention of going into the military, no big dream of going and being a pilot. Mom and dad, blue collar, hardworking. Dad made the decision early that I was going to go to college. And the only reason that I applied to the Air Force Academy was so my mom and dad wouldn't have to pay for college. I knew I would get an education, and I would be there for 4 years, and I would have a job on the back end that would take care of me with benefits and stuff like that. And so that was the whole reason I threw my name in the hat, not even expecting that I would get it. Now, when I did get it, it was kind of amazing. Family was really happy, really proud. My dad celebrated that by taking a trip to Florida and buying a bass boat with a big motor with all the money he had saved for me to go to college, and quickly told me, you need to do well at the Air Force Academy. All your college money is out there in the driveway right now.
Wow.
So, but really no real dream of going. Thought I'd go for a few years and then I'd get out.
Wow. I think that's neat, and I know we're going to get into this discussion. That's neat that like you and your family saw this as a way to post-secondary advancement in career, and truly what it was for.
And it was, and it goes into one of the things I talk with a lot of families about. If you can get someone to go off and do something like this, you can change the trajectory of the family in a lot of different ways. So like my sister went to college, both of my sons went to college. All 3 of my sister's kids went to college. I'm not saying college is the only thing you can do now, particularly with what we've developed in Tennessee with career and technical education. You can advance a lot of different ways, but it set a different expectation for our family of what we thought we ought to be doing.
So you finished this 38-year decorated career in the Air Force, and lots of people at that point go home and decide they're going to fish, as you said your dad likes to do, or whatever it is you want to do in retirement. But instead, you chose to continue serving in a different capacity in your community. And so why choose education and superintendency?
So one of the things that I firmly believe, I was able to do what I did, go to the Air Force Academy, go through the United States Air Force Test Pilot School, go through National War College, serve as a leader and do a lot of different things. All that was built off the education I got in Hamblen County. And so plain and simple, the reason I came back, it was try to make a difference for these young men and women that are coming up. I want these kids, the young men and women that are in our district, to have those opportunities, get that solid educational foundation so that if they want to go be an Air Force officer, they can go do it. If they want to go be a doctor, they can do it. If they want to run a business, a welding business, or have career and technical education aspirations. And really, I believe what we're doing is we're giving those young men and women that educational background to be able to go do whatever they want to go do. I don't want our ability to educate them to be the limb fact for what they're going to be able to go achieve with whatever they want to go do.
All right. I'll ask you this question we ask everyone who comes on the podcast. At Knox County Schools, we believe we exist to raise the next generation and prepare the next generation so that Knoxville continues to be great. And so just thinking about yourself early on, what experiences that you have that prepared you for where you are now?
You know, my dad, he taught me hard work. He taught me dedication, and he taught me how to treat people. That is the biggest from a leadership. You know, I've had a lot of great leaders. I've learned a lot from a lot of people over the years, but my dad set that foundation really solidly early on. I learned a great deal from. I had great teachers, particularly at the high school level, math, English teachers, other ones. They gave me a lot of things that helped me understand what the importance of that education, how it applied, and what you could actually do.
Interesting. Takes a village. Different folks who have spoken in. Obviously, your father, parents are such a foundation for that. But then just really talking about educators again and how that motivated you. I think this is important for our students to hear. We talk a lot about people think that you've always just been, you know, who you are. You're a superintendent, 4-star general, and they don't see all the things that it takes to get there. So it's great for our kids to hear it.
One of my sons said, well, I don't want to go in with the military, Dad, because I don't think I can do what you did. I go, son, I'm a 2-star general. Okay, I've been working at this for a number of years. I didn't start doing what I'm doing now. I started down here being a pilot, and then it grew over time. And so I think being a continuous learner is really key, and I think that's what a lot of our educators can set the foundation with our students of. You got to continue to learn. You're never done. I am on day 370 something of Duolingo right now with Spanish because I got to learn, because our student population is 34.9% Hispanic. 20% is English second language. So I'm trying to learn so I can better understand kind of what's going on.
That's fantastic. As we go to break, speaking of continuous learning, what is the best book you've read recently?
The anxious generation, without a doubt. Without a doubt. It really will explain. My personal communication device policy in Hamblen County is probably a little bit different than most other districts around here. And if you read through that book, you will see what personal communication devices are doing to our young men and women and how it's hindering them and hurting their development. And it's interesting. The book was published the month that we did our first reading of our changed policy. So I can't say it drove my policy, but it really definitely reinforced our policy when we took the step to take them away from the high school kids all through the day.
Interesting. Great start, guys. When we come back, let's talk about what enlistment really means, what that process looks like, and who should be doing it. But for now, this is the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk. Coming up on the Education Blueprint.
But we need, as a nation, young men and women who are willing to go stand in the breach to protect our freedoms.
This is the Education Blueprint. I'm Dr. Jon Rysewyk, here with our guest superintendent, 4-star General Arnie Bunch. Exploring military service pathways is our topic for the day. In Knox County Schools, we have talked a lot about our goalposts moved a couple years ago. Graduation was what we were trying to get before. And now we talk about that in 3 E's. We talk about enrollment, we talk about employment, and we talk about enlistment. So enlistment is one that is probably newer to folks in high school thinking about choosing either a military career or at least those first 4 years to get some of those benefits when you leave. So, curious, as someone who made their career in the military, now as a superintendent, what do those conversations look like between you and students or parents in your district?
Yeah, it's interesting, and you kind of hit it when you did your intro. There are people that are very afraid of the military. I had at a football game at seniors night shaking the hands of a parent, and the parent go, don't ever talk to my kid about being in the military. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions. I applaud you for trying to have that focus. I'm very open. I'm never afraid to talk about enlisting and about going to one of the academies or going to ROTC, about what my career path was, what some other opportunities are that are out there. And so I try to welcome that, embrace it, and try to clear up some of the myths. I think many people immediately think of the infantryman, or one of the things, the misperceptions you get right out of the movies or whatever else. And that's not really the way it is.
Maybe just speak a little to your experience of that myth that everyone was shipped out the first 6 weeks after they finished basic.
I never saw combat.
My dad didn't either in 20 years.
I served during the time of the Cold War. I flew B-52s. I went through a year of pilot training. Then I went through 6 months of B-52 training. Then I went through 2 months of crew training before I was ever officially a co-pilot. So it's not like you just go in and you immediately flip into those jobs. If you go to basic, you're then going to go to training in whatever career field you're going to be in, so that you've got secondary training, so you're at the entry level. And we have 3 levels, a 3 level, a 5 level, and a 7 level. 3 level is you're the basic guy who can do a task, but you don't even get that when you first show up at a unit, because you got a complete training. You got somebody looking over you to shepherd you, to guide you, to make sure that you are prepared before you're out there on your own. As a 5 level, you start getting to the point that you are cleared, you're thought of in a more senior level, and you can actually start shepherding over some of the 3 levels that are coming in. And so it's very structured to make sure you're getting the right training and you're prepared for any task that you're going to get really hit into.
I like that. I can think of a local example of a friend of mine who's actually a judge in town who was a JAG, who went through the same kind of thing, spent his time in the military to become an attorney to get his law degree, and you probably dealt with yourself with engineering degrees. There's a lot of jobs that will convert to civilian jobs at some point. You talk about that. We've seen a stat that about 80% of the jobs in the military are non-combat jobs.
Very much so. Everybody immediately thinks pilots or driving a tank or an infantryman or a SEAL or whatever. The reality is, if you can imagine it, we do it. There are opportunities to get your education and transition over to being an officer. We have enlisted members that go to the United States Air Force Academy. We have enlisted members that go to ROTC at universities to get their degree. We have enlisted members that will go to officer training school after they get their degree, because they've got a degree now and they want to go become an officer. So there are a lot of those kind of opportunities that are out there that not everybody sees or everybody realizes. We've got enlisted and officers that do finance and accounting. We have cyber warriors who are keeping the networks running or doing cyber defense or protecting us from cyber attacks, engineers, doctors. It's a small city at a base. I mean, Eglin Air Force Base, where I was at multiple times, we had 5 different operational wings there, either doing acquisition, doing research, flying training missions, testing. I mean, you're not pigeonholed into one little thing. And so as young men and women come up, what I encourage them to do, and I encourage families to do, is don't be afraid to talk to a recruiter about what are the options that are out there. If you want to be a Marine, that's a little bit different. Every Marine is an infantryman first, and then they do other things. But for a lot of Air Force folks, you may go to basic training, then you may go to Keesler Air Force Base to become a communications expert, or you may go off to be an intel officer, or you may go to a training to be a Space Force individual who is monitoring satellites. There are so many opportunities, and many of those opportunities, if you serve for a certain number of years, easily transition out of the military, should that be the choice you decide. Or you may end up being like me. You thought you were going to go for 5 or 6 years. You may fall in love with it. What I often say is you join for one reason, you stay for other reasons. You join because you want the educational benefits that we provide in the military, or you want to get an expertise. What you may find is camaraderie, sense of serving something bigger than just yourself, or you get great jobs at a young age. I mean, I was a B-52 aircraft commander with a crew of 6 by the age of 26. I was a first lieutenant aircraft commander with 4 other first lieutenants and a second lieutenant. There's nowhere in the industry you're going to get that kind of an opportunity at that young of an age. It just doesn't happen. Young enlisted and young officers, we give them a lot of leash, and we let them go do things that in a lot of cases you wouldn't get that experience or exposure were you in the civilian sector, because they'd want to develop you more before you would be allowed to do it.
I like that. I'm sensing there's a very intentionality around development in the service. I like that. That's just like they're really, you're there, and they're not just taking what you are, and they're trying to grow you and make you even more approved.
What I told our young officers and our young enlisted as I got more senior, we talk about you a lot more behind your back than you realize. Okay? We're watching because we know we got to grow our next generation. I mean, and that's one of the things I found when I got into this role. You need to know who are those next assistant principals, who are those next principals. Make sure you're challenging them and they know that you care about them, so they're growing. That's what we were doing in the military. We would pick someone and we'd go, you got this additional duty now. I'm really giving you a chance to show what you can do. This is not a punishment. This is to see what you can do and get you exposure so that you're ready to go to another level. I think sometimes we need to look at that in education as well.
Yeah, that seems like it crosses over all fields, right? We need that kind of leadership.
Well, I have a question, just a practical question, I think, because you touched on a lot of this. But as a parent, if I came to your office and I said my son or daughter is interested in enlistment, but I know also that there's other ways for them to get an education that doesn't involve the kind of risk that people perceive comes with the military. How do you have that conversation with that parent?
Yeah, what I tell the parents are there's risk in everything. I mean, you have risk if you go to the University of Tennessee. I mean, everywhere you go, there are risks. What you want to make are calculated or measured or considered risk. We're not going to put your sons and daughters into harm's way. The vast majority of our military members never go into that kind of a situation. But even if we're going to put them in that, we're going to do what we can to make sure they're trained, make sure they're going in with assured success, making sure they've got the right tools. We value each and every one of the men and women that put on the uniform, and we're going to take care of them. What you gain out of that are experiences that you may not get at a university or something else. That ability to handle the unexpected and deal with people outside that controlled environment, build up that resilience that you need to be able to survive life. That's the other benefit of enlistment. That resiliency, One of the things I talk about, and I hate to say out of COVID, but I still think we're feeling the effects of some of that in some ways with some of our kids. I still worry about this generation and the young ones for their emotional and mental health, and I worry about them for their inability to interact in a societal manner. Those are things you learn because you get put out there and you have to do it when you get in the military. You don't have a choice.
I want to hit one more thing around military and just get your experience from this. So sometimes military has been looked at as not everyone's got it figured out at 17, 18, when they graduate high school.
That's a very great point.
And there's those, for a student who's maybe trying to figure out what to do next. Did you experience some of that in some of your maybe colleagues in the military and how they figured that out?
I experienced a lot of that. And a lot of young men and women, by the time they get 17 or 18, they just don't think school's the right thing for them right now, and they want to take a different approach. I think the military gives them a great opportunity to get life experiences. And what they may find is, okay, I really do want to go get that education. A lot of our enlisted folks, and you said your dad was a retired E9, a lot of militaries around the world have got great officers. What makes our military different is our professional senior NCOs and NCOs. And those are young men and women that come in, they get that training and they want to stay. They see they can make a big difference. It's the master sergeants, the senior master sergeants, the chiefs. They're the ones that make us so much different. Many of our enlisted members, they've got college degrees. Some of them are PhDs. They make things happen.
Just a little bit of housekeeping for those listening that may not know. Give us a rundown of the difference between enlisted officer, NCO.
I'm sorry, you hit on this initially. You either know it or you don't know it based on kind of where you grew up. What I call that is an acronym Hades. I just fell into that trap. So NCO is a non-commissioned officer. Enlisted, don't have to have a degree. It's a rank structure at E1 to E9. On the officer side, it's O1 to O10. Officer is college degree through a variety of sources, ROTC, Air Force Academy, or you can go get a degree in a university and you can come in as an officer that way. There are a lot of different ways you can come in as an officer. Enlisted members, they take a slightly different oath of office, and they come in as usually in the E1 to E3 range. A lot of that's based on how well they do on their scores, the ABSAB, as they come in. And it's a different rank structure, and usually the officers end up being the leaders. But it is a great avenue for young men and women that are, they're doing good. They want to go see the world. They want to experience something different. They may not be ready to go to college right now. There are just a lot of great opportunities that open some different doors.
That's good. I know you talk about that. There's a real good friend of mine who, 18, not the best of home life, joined the military, is now a surgical robot technician and got an engineering degree out of it. So again, there are lots of opportunities to kind of find yourself, it sounds like, get exposures and do those things.
You can. And, you don't have to have a spotless, there are things that occur in life that you can overcome as you go into the military. I wouldn't do drugs. That's not a good choice. That's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. But we need, as a nation, young men and women who are willing to go stand in the breach to protect our freedoms.
Right. I think a lot of people may never really thought of military service as both a way to serve their country and that stepping stone for education and career growth. When we come back, let's talk about what Knox County Schools is doing to make sure students understand enlistment as a real option after graduation, whether they're looking to go straight into service or interested in going to college as well. But for now, this is the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk. Coming up on the Education Blueprint.
Our core values in the Air Force: integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. Those are our core values. I don't know anything you would do within a school system that wouldn't apply to.
This is the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk. And John, I think some listeners might think this is an interesting topic for us to be covering on an education podcast because there was a time where enlistment was sort of a dirty word, but things are shifting.
Yeah, they are. As we've thought about it over the last 3 years. We think about what are those opportunities we can give students post-graduation. As I said before, we want them to demonstrate that kind of mastery or proficiency before they leave us, because they still have loving and caring adults around them, right? So if you can prove you can do it now, the confidence you have on the other side is a whole lot better. And it makes sense to us on the enlistment side, too, to make that happen. There's just so many things, and Arnie, you've touched on a few of those, just that confidence that the military gives you to be able to succeed and to build some of that character. Tons of opportunities. You've mentioned travel. We haven't really touched yet on the educational pieces of the GI Bill that allows folks who have served to be able to go in and kind of get college paid for or degree paid for. So I'm sure I'm forgetting some. So what are some other benefits that you would say?
Yeah, there are great educational benefits that are out there. And I think that is still one of the big draws is if you want to get a college education and you want to advance, there's still a lot of ways that can happen. The other one I think is very beneficial right now with a lot of the fields with cyber, with aircraft maintenance. There's so many things that if you get in and you decide the military is not for you, you are so well prepared to make that transition out of it, back into the civilian world, because military members learn discipline, they learn attention to detail, and so highly coveted on the outside world as employees because they've got that leadership. They actually do show up on time. And so a lot of the things that employers are looking for, we're instilling in them from the very beginning. It's not optional. So there are a lot of things there that are good.
Yeah, I think, not unlike we would see probably in the civilian world, there's that whole integrity piece of that, right? There's a lot of, as Arnie said before, showing up on time, being prepared. I think, too, you start getting this kind of purpose calling. It's more than a paycheck. It's got to be something that they believe in. It's got to be this commitment to something bigger. So if you have that same commitment to the work that they're going to do and you show up on time and you're prepared and you have the technical skills, you're going to be great serving in another corporate kind of job when you leave. So I don't know if you'd add to that, Arnie.
Yeah, the other one I would say is accountability. If something goes wrong, you got to let us know what it is. You got to come forward. I think that's what also an employer wants and looks for in an employee. The military opened my eyes to so many things education-wise and what was going on in the nation. And it opened the eyes of my kids. So during one of the times I was getting assigned to a state out west, the public education system in the area that we were going was absolutely atrocious. And so I made the decision to move my family back to Morristown to get my son a better education and allow him to chase one of his dreams, which he wanted to be a college swimmer. And he could do that in that area, and he had a support network around him to take care of him while I was off in California. They'd been there only about 2 weeks, and my oldest one came to my wife and said, "Thank you, Mom." Now, I don't know how old everybody's kids are, but an 18-year-old going to a parent and going, "Thank you," that's not usually what you hear out of an 18-year-old. And she said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Many of these kids can't see past the county line." By moving us and giving us these experiences, I know the world is a lot bigger out there, and I don't have to limit myself. And so that is something that the military opened even my kids' eyes up to that I wasn't aware we were doing. And I think that's what enlisting and being able to go off and chase dreams and be able to see things. And I think even if they don't go into the military, having military people talk to them and share their experiences, it makes it to where you don't have to just limit yourself to the third smallest county in the state of Tennessee, Hamblen County. There are other things you can actually go do, and I think there's a benefit out of that to let people see there's more opportunities out there.
Something that I didn't realize when I was in high school and, just a teenager was it doesn't have to stop at JROTC. You've got the educational opportunities with the military. You can go to any college you want. It's not just the academies. If they've got an ROTC program and you can get financial help that way. There's National Guard financial help available. There's the GI Bill after school. I'm curious, your thoughts on JROTC. Were you involved in that when you were in high school?
I was not. I lived a very, very sheltered experience. When I look at our Air Force JROTC program, that has helped so many of our young men and women. They're in the Marines or they've gone to the Air Force Academy, they've gone to the Naval Academy, they've gone to West Point. They win all these awards for community support and excellence. And they go on trips. So they went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky a while back. I'm now working to get them into Arnold Engineering Development Complex, which if you got a bunch of young men and women that want to be engineers, that's a great place to go visit. And getting them exposed to those things, it's phenomenal. It opens their doors. Here's the other thing that it does. If you've got a strong JROTC program, but it straightens some young men and women out that were going the wrong way, they put on that uniform, and it gives them okay, wait a minute, I'm getting looked at a little bit differently here. I've got to act a little bit differently here. We've seen it turn around quite a few lives. It changes them, even if they're not the model, when they go in. But having that exposure, you can change the trajectory of a high school student just by going into JROTC. And it can continue as they become enlisted or chase other opportunities.
You talk about those life trajectories. You talked about your personal story with your family and how that changed. Very similar for mine. So my dad got his degree, went in, but got his master's degree with the GI Bill. And, and two brothers too. And none of us ever considered not going to college, right? That kind of set a new standard for our family to say this is what we need to do. So, and again, don't know if any of that would have been possible without the financial benefit from the military. Fortunate to go visit a lot of ours, and we have 9 of our 14 high schools that have them, and you're right, from Navy to Army to Air Force, all of those. And we actually have one middle school that's doing one now that feeds up to the high school. We've seen just the pride. There is discipline. There is practice. There is precision. There's all these things that make that work. I got to go to one of ours and watch them work on marching in the parking lot, and the pride they took, and the leadership development of each of those students who are an officer in their JROTC that I watched the teachers turn over to them to get this unit ready for inspection, and how they do all these kinds of things, and just the sense of pride for that.
Well, they're learning leadership. They're learning what it means. If you're an officer in that, you're over other cadets. You're telling them what to do. You're learning leadership. Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so all of us have an ability to lead and have an influence. And I think learning that at an early age, we all are going to interact with people for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. If you can have that be positive as a young junior, senior, sophomore, and you can learn how to interact and work well, you're going to be better prepared no matter what you do. If you go enlisted, you're going to be great. If you go officer, you're going to be great. If you go work at wherever it is, if you've learned how to interact and work with people, you're going to be better off. And so I think there's a lot of foundation they set by going through the JROTC programs.
I didn't think the JROTC instructors, they bring it to a staff, they bring having been a former principal, they bring a very different worldview. They bring a very different set of experiences to students.
A lot of the things that I did in the military very easily, to me, transitioned over into being an educator. It's leadership. It's setting a vision. It's holding people accountable.
Speaking of the JROT instructors, one of our employees at KCS who serves in the Tennessee Army National Guard actually nominated us for a pretty big honor, the Department of Defense's Employer Support Freedom Award. John, if you could talk a little bit about what that actually is.
Yeah, it was just kind of cool. We didn't expect that to happen at all, but I got to go to the Pentagon to receive that award on behalf of KCS, and it was really neat. I know we're talking a lot today about how students might go and enlist and make their careers, but we also actually encourage current folks or retired folks who have served in the military for all the things we've been talking about today, for their leadership skills, the integrity they have, teaching abilities they have. So we've really tried to do everything we can policy-wise to make Knox County schools attractive for military folks.
To come teach in our schools, you mean?
Yeah, I think all the things we have talked about today builds into individuals we see in those folks who work for us. It's that commitment. I think it's the call to service is a really big piece of that. I think there's a lot of parallels, but there is a big a call to service to say, I think you said it well, Arnie, when you said the something bigger than ourselves, like a cause bigger than ourselves. Totally see that in military service. Totally see that in the teaching profession as well.
Completely agree.
Integrity, grit, the willingness to teach, pay it forward, all of those things, we see those values and want those values in all of our educators in Knox County schools. So when we see a veteran who's already proven that in another career, we want them to come work for us.
I applaud you because there are things that veterans bring. Our core values in the Air Force: integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. Those are our core values. I don't know anything you would do within a school system that wouldn't apply to. I mean, that's all we're really looking for. We need people to be honest with us. We know we're serving something beyond ourselves, and we need to be excellent every day because we're shaping the future one student at a time. If we don't have these kids ready to go and go out into the community to be contributing members of society, then the success of Knox County, the success of Hamblen County, it's in danger. And so I applaud you for doing all those great things and supporting everybody and creating an environment that's welcoming for veterans, because I think if they come and teach, they can bring some great experiences.
That was fantastic, guys. And when we come back, we'll answer some questions I think our listeners may have about military service. But for now, this is the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk. Coming up on the Education Blueprint.
I think any time you get the opportunity to expose these young men and women to other opportunities they may not normally see, you can educate them better and they can make better decisions as they go forward.
Welcome back to the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk. I'm Prentice Elliott, your co-host and producer, and a parent with 5 kids in public school. It's hard to believe even when I read it. John, we talked a little bit over the course of this season, especially in our last episode, about the paradigm shift in what success looks like for each kid after graduation. Share with us a little bit your perspective on that. Why specifically has enlistment become one of those big 3 options?
That's a good question, Prince. I think, for us, we want to make sure that we maximize every opportunity for kids. We have 60,000 kids. We know there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. So what we try to do is really figure out what are those pathways and then have our staff be super intentional about making it clear for folks how to get to the places where they want to go. And I think you think about kind of the last 20 years, and everyone thinks enrollment. That's the thing. You finish high school, you enroll in post-secondary. One of those that probably few people really understand all the pieces to the military and the trainings it provides, the opportunities for further education. We've talked about, pretty much any job that exists in the military side exists in the civilian side. So we need to make sure that students and families understand every one of those benefits so that they can go be successful and continue to make Knox County successful for the future.
Yeah, and let me ask Arnie this. When you're talking to students and you're talking to parents, how do you decide whether to recommend to a family that military might be for them?
I really try my very best not to limit it. I think it's an option and an avenue for the vast majority of young men and women. Most of the individuals that I interact with, I just want to inform them of what the opportunities are and make sure they're making an informed decision. What I want to give them is, no, that's not really how it works. Here's kind of how this goes. Here's what your son or daughter would have to go through. But I try to open it up as many as possible and make sure they just understand that there are opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, I think there was a time, or at least there was a perception, that there was a certain kind of person that would go into the military. And there was a certain kind of person after high school that would go to college. And I know Dr. Rysewyk has talked about this a lot, is the blurring of all of these lines in a really great way.
It's still there. There's still misperceptions. Mm-hmm. There's still a belief of, well, I can never do the military. There's still some of those there. But I believe after we talk with them, we show people kind of here's what's going on. I think bringing in guest speakers that have got the background, I think any time you get the opportunity to expose these young men and women to other opportunities they may not normally see, you can educate them better and they can make better decisions as they go forward.
Yeah, that's exactly what our 865 academies are doing. Our freshmen hear from guest speakers just like you're talking about. And the older kids have these, what we call guaranteed experiences. John, can you talk about those a little bit?
That's why we redesigned high school 3 years ago to have the 865 Academy experiences. And we want to be more intentional moving forward in what this pathway could look like for the military. Job shadowing, work-based learning, post-secondary visits. One of our local high schools has an aviation program. They were able to go to the air base, and the aviation group got to go over and actually tour and have that, hey, you could do this in the military if this is what you choose to do going forward.
I think the one thing that we've kind of talked a little bit about, but we've kind of talked around it, what I hear from some of our industry partners is some of our kids need to learn some soft skills, which by the examples you just gave of what you're doing by working through and job shadowing and other things, they're getting exposure.
Let's get to a practical question here. For students that are considering the military, How does that process work? How do you join? What does the training look like? What's the path to service?
I would always encourage the students, number one, start early with a guidance counselor if you think you want to go one of the academies, or if you think you're going to want to go ROTC. Let them get you the information. There's a lot of great information out there. There's a whole process that you go through to go to one of the academies to get a nomination. You need to be informed, and you got to do it early, like as a sophomore, no later than as a sophomore. On the enlisted side, I encourage the family to meet with the recruiters, not just the student. I want the family to understand what's going on so that it's a family decision. And that way moms and dads or guardians are more at ease with what that's going to look like. There are a lot of opportunities. Of course, having 38 years in the Air Force, I'm kind of partial to the Air Force. But there are great opportunities in all the services. Coast Guard's got great opportunities that not everybody thinks of. They do amazing things. The Marines, I mean, every one of the branches has its own niche, and I'd encourage the students to talk with all of them and pick the one that best meets what they think they want to go do for their future. And then they sign on the dotted line and they decide they're going to go. A lot of that, what their opportunities are, will be based on how they scored on the pre-tests that they do, usually as a junior when they're doing the ABSAB. My strong encouragement for kids is take this seriously, because it can limit some of your opportunities for training later on if you don't score very well, because they look at that as a meter of the potential. And then once they get it, they'll go to some kind of an initial boot camp or basic training, and then they'll go to follow-on training for whatever their career specialty is going to be. Some of that will be very, very long, and it'll depend on what they want to go do. But it's challenging, and we want them to be trained, and we want them to be ready. So explore what's out there.
That's fantastic.
I'm going to jump in real quick on the ASVAB. I think that's one that a lot of
and that's one of the tests, aptitude tests for a branch
Correct.
of the military, correct?
Everyone takes that. All services look at that. You take it as a junior, sophomore.
Like the SAT or the ACT for the military, more or less.
Similar, and it
That's a
counts.
good way to think about it.
Sure, it just helps give you an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
On the ABSAB, there are certain career fields that enlisted when you are going in that they will immediately look at you for if your score is really high. There's some that if you score lower, some of those opportunities may or may not be there. So please take these serious. And I'll use one that's very selective, intel. If you want to go into intelligence, you really need to do well, okay? And because it's looked at as kind of a meter. That doesn't mean if you don't do exceptionally well, there aren't other great jobs that are out there, but it is a serious test you need to do really well on, because they can have some career implications for what training you may be able to get into later on.
All right, Arnie, so you went to the Air Force Academy. We've talked kind of how that is a parallel to enrollment. That's a college or university. We also see students who may go into ROTC, same thing. They may go to a state university or somewhere like that and be able to participate. So both of those really tie closely to enroll. And then we have this enlist section. You may not go straight to school. You may go straight into service, into basic training, into different kind of trainings there. So maybe could you paint that picture for someone who's not going to enroll in a post-secondary university or college but would still join the military? What's that enlistment route look like?
So the timing of some of this will vary depending on a lot of variables at play. But the normal timeline is once you graduate from high school and you've enlisted, could be quick. I've had some students that went week after they graduated from high school. I'll use Air Force. They flew to San Antonio, Texas, and they went right into basic training. Or it could be that based on the career field that you're going into or the specialty that you're going into, you may have a period of time that you would wait. That doesn't mean your slot goes away. What we don't want is you to graduate basic and then sit around, on your hands for a long period of time. We want to get you through the pipeline as quickly as we can to get you out in the field to do real missions and gain some of that experience that you need.
And speaking of timing and aptitude testing and graduation and service, we're about to host an event to honor our kids on that path to enlistment, this Celebrating Service event. Something new we're doing. Jon, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
That's going to be our opportunity to recognize high school seniors who are choosing to enlist in the military after graduation, or who were appointed to military academies, or who received an ROTC scholarship for the next year.
What I like about the Celebrating Service event is when you're honoring these young men and women, other kids are seeing that.
Yes.
Kids in middle school, freshmen, and
yes,
and they're seeing kind of the worth that is being put on these kids and the appreciation that other folks have for them. So to those students and their families, Arnie, what advice would you give them about making decisions about life after graduation, specifically when it comes to military service?
Don't go by the stereotypes. Don't immediately slam the door. At least listen and consider. There are a lot of great opportunities out there. And as I said earlier, there are things that I got to do at an earlier age than I would have ever been allowed to have done had I gone into the civilian world. Why did I stay? Kept getting great opportunities, kept getting to be a leader, kept getting to be in charge of things. I would have never envisioned starting as a lieutenant that I would in the end be in charge of an 89,000 person organization running a lot of stuff across the Air Force. So don't close the door. Don't be closed-minded about what it is, because we really do care about all the young men and women that we have. They're very important. We take care of them. We train them. We only utilize them when they're ready, and we want to make sure they live a good life and they're serving their country.
Well, I think that's great, and I want to thank you again for coming in today. I want to thank you just for demystifying a lot of things. I think it's going to be very helpful for our families, for our students, to really understand kind of behind the scenes in the military and what that world looks like. Thank you again for serving, and thank you for serving now as superintendents, and just really appreciate your time today and your friendship.
I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and happy to talk to anybody all about the Air Force Academy or the academies in the process.
We appreciate that. Thanks so much for being here.
All right.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and follow and subscribe to the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk for easy access to all of our newest content. And if you can, leave us a review. It really helps others find the show. The Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk is a production of Knox County Schools and hosted by Dr. Jon Rysewyk with me, Prentice Elliott. Our team also includes Knox County Schools Assistant Superintendent of Strategy, Corey Lautner, KCS Creative Services Supervisor, Abby Harris, and KCS Executive Director of Public Affairs, Carly Harrington. Kaylee Walker coordinates promotion at Knox Schools on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Our cover art was designed by Justin Johnson.